Hello, welcome back to the studio. My name is Dan Shelley, a professional paintball photographer, and in this episode, I sit down with a dear friend of mine, Ryan Gray, and we dive into topics covering from vulnerability, what it means to say I love you. We talk about his Team USA journey. This is definitely an episode you don't want to miss, and I'm pretty sure I cried at some point. All right, let's jump right into it. Enjoy.
Photographer of the Year, let's hear it for Dan Shelley. Shellda Photos.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Shellda Podcast. And in today's episode, I've got my dear friend, Ryan Gray, and I'm excited to jump into our relationship and how we've met and how we've grown over the years. Before we do that, though, I have to give a huge shout out to my two show sponsors. Literally hot off the presses, yesterday I got a package from Hormesis, and Roman, some know, some don't. Roman works for Hormesis and does a lot of their packaging and a lot of like the behind the scenes stuff. He sent me messages like, hey, I've got something for you. No idea what it was. Opened it up yesterday, and it's this jacket. Like, if you've never seen a Hormesis like denim jacket, it is unreal, the quality of it. And I immediately fell in love with it. And then he sent me a text of, the reason why I picked that is the colors of it reminded me of the dirt and the clouds, and you're always laying in the dirt and you're shooting photos like kind of up into the clouds. And I was like, man, it made me connect it even more with it. So huge shout out to the team over at Hormesis for hooking me up. And then secondly, BFP Gear. Junior and Gina have been just such an amazing part of my circle going through this photo journey. And recently they sent over the pads I'm going to be wearing for the year, the carbon SC elbow pads. I've actually been wearing them for the past 2 seasons. I'm out there, 40 plus weekends at Outlaw plus events, wearing them multiple days for a weekend, and they hold up, like they just last. So I'm super excited to be rocking some carbon gear this year for my elbow pads. And if you need anything else, head over to bfpgear.com. So with that, I've got my buddy, Ryan Gray. How are you, sir?
Man, I'm really good. Hey, before we jump in, like every time I hear that Photographer of the Year announcement, I get chills because, there were really 2 reasons that I wanted to go to the summit last year, to the show, obviously for Mike Bianca, and then for you. And you and I had dinner beforehand. And I remember the moment they said your name and the chills and the excitement for my friend. And so every time that comes, I watch your episodes and that comes on, I get to kind of relive that moment. So it's really cool. I'm glad that's in your intro.
Yeah, that was I feel myself getting choked up talking about it. That was a really big moment in my life. Man, I didn't expect this. And I'm actually in the process. I haven't told anyone this yet. Only Amanda knows, but I'm in the process of writing a book that like kind of talks about my journey, because it's just been crazy the past few years of how everything has taken off and whatnot. And literally the timing of this is crazy. Literally this morning, I wrote about that whole entire night of, you and I having dinner beforehand. I've never been a person to spill anything or drop anything, and like literally an hour before the show started, I spilled something on my shirt that I was supposed to wear, and like it's just the whole entire night. So yeah, I really, every time I hear it too, like it brings me right back to that night of how important it was for me.
It's a great moment.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. And thanks for having me on. And, I'm so excited to do this just simply because of, I've been on a bunch of podcasts, have a podcast, and anytime we get to kind of get away from the paintball and dig a little more into the personal, which is what your content brings, I'm a huge fan. So thanks for the invite.
Yeah. And that's exactly, you're welcome. That's exactly why I wanted to start this. Is I love going to events, and like, I love hanging out with friends and meeting new friends. But like, I'm not into the gear anymore. Like, I don't even know half the gear that people are shooting or like what some of the bunker names are. I'm in it for the relationships.
Totally.
And I feel like we've been missing that for the past, I don't know, however many years in the sport. And I've just heard everybody say like paintball's missing the human side of it and we're missing the connection. And I was like, you know what? Everyone's throwing these ideas out. I don't want to be that guy that just throws another idea out. Let me go try it and let me go try to add that human element to it. So I hope some people that are listening and tuning in start to enjoy and can really resonate with the human side of the piece that we're missing from our sport.
Yeah, I mean, you've had some bangers.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I actually want to start off with thanking you because when I first started back in the sport, I had struggled to find my identity for most of my life. Like I would go through different hobbies and, like I'm a disc golfer, I'm a collector, I'm a whatever it is. Like I just needed that validation. But for some reason, like when I met you, we had a connection, I feel like right away.
Yeah.
And as we kept building our relationship, you have taught me so much about me as a person that like I have just brought myself to a whole nother level. And up till that point, like I was thinking about it, I had never said, I love you to any other person outside of my family or like a girlfriend or a spouse. It just wasn't something that I did. Like no one in my sphere did that. And when you said to me like, hey Dan, like I love you, as we were walking away, it's just like, it hit me. I'm like, what? Like, what does this mean? And then you kept doing it. And like, your text message is like, hey, love you, buddy. And like, you just taught me so much that it's okay to love people, like love your friends and people are close to you. Where does that come from?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. And thank you for that. Cause I do, first of all, I think it's really important. Men, the biggest lie a man tells is I'm fine. It's the biggest lie we tell. We can have the weight of real life with family and jobs and whatever the case may be, and then outside of that, especially in our sport, there's a lot of addiction problems and people struggling with mental health issues and things like that. And it's because I am one of those people and I've been able to kind of make it to the other side as long as I do the things daily I need to do to keep myself right. I got to a place when I came back to paintball that I started seeing some of the same faces that were there when I left, right? That were here when I left. And we picked up a lot of them right where we left off, just from my perspective in a new way, because now I'm sober and I'm trying to live a little bit differently, not a lot. And one of those things is trying to make other men around me know, like, I'm one of those people that, like, I always have gas for my friend's fire, right? Like, if you're passionate and excited about something, Scott Stewart and I had this kind of conversation, Scott Stewart from Paintball Fit, and Dylan was there. And so Dylan was filming for Aftershock. And like, anytime he posts something, I like it. Right. Anytime Scott posts something, I like it or love it or whatever. Like, they're going to get some sort of reaction from me if I see it 100% of the time. Right. Like, anytime my friends are doing things to try to, like, not only better themselves, but share a really cool message, I'm going to be involved. Like, I want to try to support that. And with people inside my circle, which are the people I feel like who've shared a part of me that is not surface. Right. They've shared a part of themselves with me that is, personal and meaningful. And it's not just the surface, how are you, paintball talk that we do 99% of the time. I want them to know I appreciate that. Right. And one of the easiest ways to do that is just say, hey man, I love you. I hope you're doing well. And so I've really tried to normalize that. Even with my friends, I'm really blessed. I have two guys that I've been friends with since I was 4. And then I have another guy that's in our circle who kind of came in about the 8th grade. And I started doing that even with them. Hey, I love you guys. I hope you're doing well. really blessed. We all go Jeeping together a couple of times a year. And so we get an Airbnb and we all connect and stay really tight. So it's really important, again, to me, for people to know, like, it's okay to say that, right? It's okay to verbalize it, because you also don't know, even in that moment, that guy could be dealing with something that you don't know about, and that flips it on its edge, right? Where, again, because of struggles and mental illness and things like that, and I've lost some friends who've taken their own lives. They quit the journey too soon, right? And if I can help with that in any way, and in such a simple way as just saying, hey man, I love you, I'm thinking about you, I hope you're doing well, then I'm in. I want to do that. And I try to even do that randomly. And I've done it, I think, to you a couple of times. I've just sent you a text and said, hey, I just want you to know, thinking about you, or maybe it's a holiday. And I do the same thing with Charles Dean, and who's dealing with some stuff right now with his family, that I try to, at least touch with him every 3 days or so, just to connect with him. And just because of weight, right? You don't know what people are dealing with. And I think it's really important for them to know, like, hey, you've got people who love and care about you. And if you need an ear, I can listen. If you need, support, I'm here for you. Just don't ask me for money. I'm probably going to say no. That's not true, by the way.
No, I know it's not. I know you would give your shirt off the back for anybody that would ask.
Not anybody, but a few people.
Thanks for sharing that, though, because that, like I said, that has just unlocked something completely different in me. Like I've grown so much as an individual, a lot because of you and our interactions, in just the power of saying, I love you. Last year, when my mom passed, one of my local friends here in Austin, Tanner, his dad passed right around the same time. And again, I was never a person to say, like, I love you to anybody. And he and I started that now. It's like, now whenever I see him at a field, like, we give each other a huge bear hug, and like, I love you back. And it's just, you feel a genuine connection. And the cool thing about it is, like, I've seen other people watch and they're like, oh, okay. Like, I kind of want that too. Like, then you start to see it kind of grow out. And it's so cool, like, what you've done for me and for other people. I truly look to you as an inspiration of somebody that I want to model my life like and for. So thank you. It really means a lot. I don't know if you knew that, but you've been a huge inspiration for me.
No, I didn't. And that, it means a lot, right? That's gas for me. That's gas.
Hey, podcast fam, I just want to interrupt super quick and say thank you so much for tuning into this episode. And speaking of tuning in, did you know that nearly 75% of you aren't actually subscribed to my YouTube channel? So the quick, easy, and free way to show your support for this channel is by just hitting that subscribe button below. That's all you have to do. And then if you do that, I can commit to you bringing you new guests each and every week, as well as continuing to find ways to constantly improving the show. All right. Thank you so much. And let's get back to the show.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know, too, if you've noticed, sometimes I'll say I love you as I'm walking away loud, especially if I'm at an event, because I do kind of want other people to hear it. Yeah. Right. Like, there's been times where you and I were talking and I walk away and I'll turn around and say, hey, love you, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love you, buddy. Right. Because I do want other people to hear it, because it's okay to say it. It's
totally
fine. Right.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And, hopefully between you and I and other people, we can normalize that it's okay to say those things and have those relationships and to really be vulnerable. It's all of my life until I got back into paintball. I was always the person that you said, like, hey, I'm fine. I'm good. It's all good. Never shared feelings. And it just completely unlocked the vulnerability piece in me. And it's just led to so many incredible conversations between Amanda and I, between folks on the show, people in the industry, just from talking other things than paintball, learning about the person. Totally.
Yeah. And that, I say this a lot, like, the how are you at paintball tournaments is always weird, right? Because like, I'll walk up to people that I care about and then I really want to know how they are. And I'll say, how are you? And they immediately give me their paintball stuff. Right. Yeah. Like, oh, we're 2-1 and we really got to win the next match. And I'm like, oh, shoot. okay, I mean, that's cool. And I hope that that goes your way, but I don't give a shit about any of that. What I'm asking is like, are you good? Is your family good? Is is everybody healthy? Like, you got any baggage and you're carrying around? You got any rocks in that backpack I can help take out for a moment? Yeah. So it's always like this weird kind of line that we walk, but you nailed it with, the conversations that you get to have and the connections you get to make become significantly more intimate, right?
Yeah.
And they become intimate in a way that most men don't get to experience with anyone but maybe a dad, right? Or a priest, or maybe a best friend if they had a really, really tight connection with one growing up. And so I think it's important, and I'm 48 years old, right? I'm not a kid anymore. And so I have a son who's 22, and I'm that for him a lot of times because he doesn't have those guys in his life. And he's getting there. He's got some friends that they're really starting to connect. And as they're growing up and maturing, they're realizing like, hey, we need that connection. Yeah. But it tells me, and my son's a really social guy. So it tells me like, if he has those problems, there's probably in our community a lot of people who they just don't have anyone. And so if you can be that person even for a moment, you're going to get as much as you give, I promise, every time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is another example of paintball teaches you life, and life also teaches you paintball, right? You can use those skills both in and out. I've heard this theme throughout the podcast so far. Sal mentioned it when I had him on. Alex mentioned it last week, that people have really small pockets of friends, like they call them their inner circle or their wolf pack, whatever you want to call it. I've been the exact opposite for almost all of my life, where I've wanted to be friends with everybody and like, we're all friends. But as I'm getting older, like I'm noticing that that's changing for me. Has that always been that way for you? Like, I know you mentioned you had a friend at 4, but has it always been close people?
Yeah. I mean, during my drunken time periods, like really when I was heavy, my alcoholism was probably at its height. At that point, I wanted to be friends with everybody because I was trying to find people who drank like I did. And that was really hard to find because I was an idiot. But yes, I've always had a smaller group that I'm close with. Like the sayings that you see on Reels all the time. There's one that everybody likes to throw out there that's from the Joe Rogan show, where it's and I forget the guy's name, the big older comedian who's from New York, and he talks about like, you don't need 50 mother effers, right? You just need 3 mother effers. You need one to do this, one to do this, and one to do this, and it's kind of right? You need the person that you can call at 3 a.m. who's going to listen to whatever you have to say. You need the person that you can call at 3 a.m. who's going to pack a shovel, and then you need the person who's I forget the third one. But nonetheless, that's kind of how it has been for me, Yeah. With the exception of now, I'm grateful to say that I probably got 20 of those kind of in each category of I know if I have a certain problem that I can reach out to this person and they're going to answer the phone every time or call me back within minutes. Right.
Yeah.
And so it has been, I always have had small circles, but it is growing as I'm getting older, which is interesting, right? Usually it goes the other way, but it is growing as I'm getting older. And we talked about this before. I think it is because as I've gotten older, I've become more vulnerable and more open. And that's invited more people into my life who need and want those same things from relationships. And Alex, you mentioned Alex, he's one of those people. I got to travel with him last year over to Europe, and we were starting to become pretty good friends before that with the show and our connection to Major League Paintball. And you and I kind of talked about it, we have a bit of a good guy club, around the events that, and really all that is when I see someone at an event and they're walking toward me, if I feel better when I see that person, they're one of those people, right? As soon as you give them a hug, and you catch up for even a moment, you feel better, you feel more whole. And so I'm, blessed to say that circle has gotten a little bit larger as I've gotten older. Again, as I've found ways to be a little more vulnerable and also to have broader shoulders. And what I mean by that is as I've gotten the wreckage of my past kind of cleaned up, and the chaos of the life that I lived before this one kind of reconciled, it has opened up opportunities for me to be able to carry more of other people's weight. So like as people have needed, have real problems and need counsel, and maybe sometimes it's not even counsel, it's just somebody to listen. And I ask people when they call me, are you wanting advice or you just need an ear? Right? Because if you just need an ear, I don't want to say anything. Like I want to be play whatever role you need me to play to make you feel better. But as I've gotten broader shoulders and I can carry more of other people's stuff, that's really helped a lot. That's helped a lot. So my circle has gotten bigger as I've gotten older. There's a lot of guys in Texas that I knew kind of during my drinking days and know now that our relationship is completely different. And in a really special way, completely different. So yeah, I would say it's kind of gone the other way, but it has always been relatively small, but it's growing. It's growing.
Yeah. And I love that because I read your article in the Great American Paintball magazine when it came out. And one of the pieces you had talked in there is how you had damaged those relationships, but after you had healed and you were working on yourself, that it gave you an opportunity to rebuild those relationships. And I think you're right. Like that vulnerability is just such a huge part of one saying, hey, I messed up. I'm sorry. Can we move forward from it?
Yeah. One of the processes through sobriety is you have to go back and reconcile, reconcile, but you have to go back and own your part in whatever damage you've done. And when you do that with people, it is an opportunity to be incredibly vulnerable and certainly humble, right? Because you're kind of going hat in hand, hoping it goes well. And I did have one of those conversations where the person told me, hey, I'm not ready yet. And it took a little while. For that person to be ready. And I'll just share it because it meant a great deal to me when it finally came about, but it was Mark Johnson. The first time I kind of went to Mark, and I'd been sober a couple of years. I just started coaching Austin Notorious in Division II, and we went to Paintball Fit to practice, and they were there, and I had an opportunity to kind of visit with Mark. He just wasn't ready yet. He needed more time. And it was at the end of that season, he came over with a jersey and he said, hey, I don't know if you're a jersey guy, but I wanted to give you this. You were a big part of my, my history and coming up, and we've obviously had our struggles, and it overwhelmed me in such a positive way. Like I remember as he's talked, I don't even remember really what I said, right? Because my adrenaline was going crazy, and I remember getting in the car and immediately calling my wife, right? Wow. And kind of breaking down a little bit, and because that was the last one of my sort of reconciliations in the program. We call them amends, right? That was the last one of my amends that had to be made. And he was the only person through my amends process who said, I'm not ready yet. Right. So it took a little bit of time, and which I was totally respectful of, right? Like I get it. I don't know that I would have been able to forgive and move on either. And now, we're pretty close again. Like we still text pretty regularly, and, I wish the best for him. He's a family. I love him and I want to see him do well. And so as I have become, more vulnerable, what's interesting too about that circle, going back to the circle, is it's a lot of the same people from before, but just in a brand new way, right? Where it isn't transactional. Because so many of my relationships during the time that I was, drinking heavily, were very transactional. Like what can I get from you? What am I going to give you? Those kind of things. Yeah. So they were real surface, and there wasn't really anything deep in it. So yeah, so it's been pretty impressive.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, because I think that. With everything you went through with obviously AC Diesel and all of that, I think a lot of people on the outside are like, wow, there's such a falling out and all this stuff. And here you are on the outside of that, still texting Mark and having this incredible relationship. And,
it wasn't.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
if you weren't vulnerable in sharing that, I think people wouldn't know. They would still think you guys hate each other or you were like complete enemies.
Not at all. In fact, like I do insurance in real life. I just wrote a restaurant policy for BJ Henningberg. Like, I had many conversations with several of the guys at World Cup. Like, this is a business. You know, that part of the stuff is transactional. It's a business, right? I wasn't able to do, and I've had so much time now I don't want to spend too much time talking about HCE, but I've had so much time now to kind of think about all the mistakes that I made. And I went in, I was able to pinpoint it. This was literally like last week. I went in with all these preconceived notions of where the guys should be playing, right? Like where each guy should be and where they fit into the puzzle. I didn't allow them enough freedom. Like I made so many mistakes, kind of setting that group up, and, you know, shame on me, because they proved it at World Cup, right? You know, they move a few pieces around, let Clint play more in the 3, put Ice kind of every point in the 2, let him shoot off the break. Like, you know, so many things that I should have seen earlier that I just didn't see. But yeah, I have no animosity at all. Because again, it's business. Not every business I've ever been involved in has been successful. I've been blessed that I've had a lot that have, but sometimes it doesn't work. Right? Like for an organization to be successful, the right pieces and the right leadership, and everybody has to be on the same page. And I don't really feel like we were, even from the jump. You know, they'd had so much chaos with different coaches, and Mark is the leader, right? So Mark stepping away and now being the coach, I think, is amazing for that group. I think he's going to do a great job. I think AC Diesel is going to be a threat next year. Like, again, I don't want to spend too much time doing that kind of talk, but because we do that on the coaches show. If you want to hear that shit, go over there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing about that. It's, you know, that just goes to show how important relationships are in paintball. Even when you're mixing business into it, right? Like it all comes back to the relationship. You did say something when you were talking about the whole entire journey through vulnerability. You mentioned your wife. And one of the things that I've noticed that I've started to do a better job because of that is a lot of the times through your posts, when you're talking, you attribute so much of your growth and your success to her. Talk to me about that.
We could be here for hours talking about her. Like, she is, number one, in the reality of my life is very simple at this point, right? Like, my kids are out of my house. My son is, you know, working and a productive member of society. And my daughter is going to school in Boston. And so it's just her and I, right? So, and I have to remind her from time to time, because she gets all in her feels about stuff. Like, she's the only thing that matters. She's it. Nothing else in my life is, other things matter, but she is the most important thing in my life. And it took me almost losing her to really find that, right? Like, when we first met, I was already doing paintball. And we've been married 28 years. So we got married young, right? I was 20 years old. She was 19. I was already doing paintball. And I told her when we started dating, like, listen, paintball was here before you. My friends were here before you. Don't ask me to give up either one, right? Like, I'm going to do those until the wheels fall off, and we'll see what happens. And, through every part of my journey, she's jumped off cliffs with me. You know, we moved to Texas after being married for 3 years so that I could go to work at National Paintball, so that I was closer to Texas Storm. Like, within 2 weeks at that time was a teacher. And so, like, 2 weeks before the school session, we were moving. She had to find a new job.
Wow.
And then 20 minutes after I accepted the job, found out we were pregnant. So, like, our entire world changed. And she just, like, okay, no problem. You know, and just like a champ, you know, she moved us. I was finishing out a 2 week notice. And so she basically moved us, found us an apartment, found a job, like, did everything. 9 months of living there, and she like found us a house, and we ended up building this really small house in Rockwall, but she handled everything while I was running around shooting people with bath beads. And then we moved back in 2009. My grandfather passed away, and that hit me in a weird way. And I wanted my kids to be closer to my parents. So we moved back to Oklahoma, had another kid in that time period. But again, like she pretty much managed everything. We built a house here in Oklahoma. She pretty much did all of that on her own, because I was at that point coaching. Within 9 months of us being back, I quit working for Key Action Sports and bought a paintball store and invested a ton of money. And she was supportive of that. And then at that point, that's when my drinking really got gnarly. Was really around 2011. It kind of went that way until 2016. I was like, gnarly alcoholism, daily, like pretty awful. But she got to a place with me. She gave me an ultimatum, and she's like, look, either you get right or I'm out, right? And I'm taking the kids, and this is over. And I went through this and it's amazing what substances will do to you. I went through 3 weeks where I really thought okay, I think I'm okay with that. I think I'm good with her leaving, and
wow,
I'll just drink myself to death. I'd gotten to that point where I was like, I'm okay just being done with this, and kind of giving up the fight. I heard this thing in the rooms, and it made me kind of open my eyes to a lot of things. I'd never had a DUI. I'd never had a car accident due to alcohol. My life, though, was in total shambles. I couldn't see it. My relationships were in total shambles. I couldn't see it. I came home after hearing this, kind of impactful thing in the rooms, and I was like, hey, I think I'm going to try to really give this an honest shot, and then we'll see where it goes. And took about 9 months for my brain to really kind of get back to where it needed to be. But I realized through that whole deal, she should have left me multiple times. Multiple times she should have left me, and she never gave up on me. And she saved my life, to be honest. That her ultimatum ultimately is what's gotten me to where I am now. And so, yeah, she saved my life. So I can't not give her credit for being such a huge part of my kind of my journey. And our relationship too is really the foundation for how I want other relationships to be. The way her and I communicate with each other now, again, because my kids are out of my house, we don't fight anymore. There's no fights. All that stuff's over, right? The big things that you have to figure out when you're a young couple, those are over for us. We're good. We're in the process of building a house right now. And it's just it's a total partnership. I'm handling these things, she's handling these things. And she even kind of made a comment the other day. She was like, this is so much different than the way this used to be, which of course I love to hear. But now the vulnerability her and I get to share with each other, because she's not afraid of my reactions. Yeah. Right. So she's able to, and again, I'm 6 years into this thing, and her and I's relationship continues to evolve, right? As she's become more comfortable with me, and I've become more comfortable with her. And so our relationship really is the foundation for kind of all the relationships I have, and not just in paintball, but in business, right? She lives in such a, it's funny, I talk about being disciplined all the time on the coaches show. And I am very disciplined.
Yeah.
But that comes from her. She is, she gets up, goes to the gym with me every day. She eats way better than I do. I have a couple of cheat meals a week. She doesn't. She'll have maybe one a month, wow. And it's impressive. So, yeah, she's a huge part of my inspiration. And it's amazing. And you have one of these, you have a partner like this that is if I can be half as good as her every day, I'm so much better than who I would be. Yeah. Right. If I can just be half as good as her, And her like, kindness and love and the way she kind of carries herself. Like if I can just emulate half of that, I'm going to be in a really good place. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. And that you kind of transitioned right into what I was going to say is I selfishly, so until I met you, I was a extremely selfish person. And I think it comes from, I was an only child for most of my life. And so in relationships, I would think, what am I getting out of this? And what can I do for me? And I kept hearing the theme that you would talk about your wife and like going on this journey together and getting back into the sport. For me, I looked at, going to these events with my friends and like hanging out at the media house. Cause I never had that, I never grew up traveling to these events. And so for me, it was like, all right, I'm going to get back into it and kind of hang out with that. And something changed after you and I had talked at some point a season or two ago where I thought, man, I can't imagine going to these events without Amanda. The whole thing going into like this season is if we're doing this, like we're doing it together, like we'll figure out a way, either we're going to events together or we're not going at all. And there's just something about it. I can't imagine not having her be there because she's inspired me so much. And I wouldn't be doing literally all of this, like the podcast, photography, if it weren't for her giving me that space of like, hey, you can do this. Like like encouraging me because I've never had that before.
Yeah.
So it's so having a foundation, having like a partner or somebody to help build you up, it kind of feeds off of each other.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Totally. And it is, I'm not at the place where I'm not going to go if she's not going to go because she doesn't want to go.
I mean, you guys have been through years of it together.
Yes. Yeah. She's like, she'll come every now and again, but like, and you've seen her at events. If it's close, she'll come. And she also knows how I am at events. Like I'm uber focused on what I'm doing and she checks on me multiple times throughout the day. You good? Because she watches the scores, right? You good? But she's, I think part of her strength too is the understanding of like when I go, she knows I need that, right? And she also needs it, just so we're clear. Like we've spent our life, again, for 28 years, I've kind of been in and out of this. We'll get through, and we're kind of there right now. She's like, so what time's your flight on Monday? And you're gone. Okay, great. Yeah. Cause she wants that time. Right.
Yeah.
She likes the sitting on the couch and reading and crocheting and not having me to deal with.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So she appreciates those times when I'm traveling and that's great too. Like I couldn't imagine having a partner who was really needy. Right. Like, and my wife is needy from about certain things, but when it comes to like hovering, like being around, she's not having that. She's very independent and she ain't having that. So that's awesome. A blessing.
Yeah. It sounds like she's taught you a lot about you and yourself and you're part of who you are today. Speaking of that, obviously you are a podcast host yourself. And I've had the amazing opportunity, and I guess it's more of a pleasure of watching the very first Coaches Show live in person when you guys did that for the first time. And
we were so bad.
Well, and it's not that you were bad, because just like anything, you've got to start somewhere, right? And like you got to learn from it. But seeing you and Mike at that time I can just see the nerves and the tension and like the awkwardness to where you are now. What has that taught you about yourself, like going through this podcast journey?
Yeah. First of all, is just do it, right? It kind of gave me this, and I've jumped off a lot of cliffs with no parachute, being an entrepreneur most of my life, every time you open a new business or you invest money in something or, there's no way out, right? Like you're in. I've done that a lot, and so I am kind of comfortable in those scenarios, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Now the podcast thing in the beginning, the inception, and a lot of people have heard this story on the show or on other podcasts Mike or I've been on. Like Mike didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it at all, and so One, I think I've always had an eye for talent in different ways, whether it's in business I've been in and brought, kind of guys and girls through the ranks of my businesses who now operate their own companies, or through paintball where I've been able to find talent and those guys, end up in the pro league for, many, many years. Mike has this, he's number one, he's incredibly intelligent, very well read, right? We talk all the time. It's like, I've traveled the world and Mike has read about it. Right. And both like offer an interesting perspective in the way we talk about things.
Yeah.
Mike's brain operates in a way that's very unique. It's incredibly unique. The things that he can kind of see happening on the field and through the development of his groups, like he's very intelligent. And so when he and I were kind of talking about possibly doing it, he was pretty out. Like he didn't really want to do it. And then once I was able to rope him in by the use of some outside actors, including Matty Marshall and a few others, to try to motivate him that it was really something we needed to do. We got to a space where I finally just said, I just did it, to be honest. Like I just did it. And went out and bought really kind of even without talking to him, I went out and bought the URL, did all the background on kind of the software platform we wanted to use, bought the cameras, bought the mic, like did everything sort of without him even saying yes really yet. And then kind of just said, hey, we're doing this, like we're doing it. And so once we started doing it, what it's kind of taught me about myself is that number one, it's okay to fail. It's totally okay. Like you're going to have bad episodes. You're going to like, the original inception of the show, the idea was to be this very highly post-produced show that we would be able to have really good news outlet, talk about things sort of about current events as they were happening. But then as we get into the meat and potatoes of the content, really focus on coaching, right? And provide more resources, which that was a real challenge in the beginning, how to get the content out there just from a resource perspective, the data collection sheets, and then the explanation of how to use them. And that's been really tough. But now, and I think we're going to get into this in a little bit with Team USA, our relationship with BKI has solved some of those problems, right? But like we went through those first 3 months of really doing an interview show, which I hated. Like that's not at all what I wanted. And we still do it every now and again. And I get it. Like sometimes there isn't a game to break down based on what we're talking about.
Sure.
But the stuff that I think makes Mike and I good at what we do are those game breakdowns. It's being able to kind of show teams, coaches, players, whatever, like box reads, like how to look at certain things, the way people are standing on the box, which sides they're fading to, during a match, kind of showing where teams are vulnerable, right? Like, hey, you're in a 2-on-1 on this side, but it looks like you guys are trying to push the other side. Was that intentional? And I think just having better conversations around those things is really who we are, right?
Yeah.
So we go through these like 3 months of really, it's an interview show, and that was like grueling. I mean, there were times too that Mike and I were like, this is not us. We don't want to do this, right? And then so we lose Jake, right? So Jake Jones is the guy who was doing all the post-production stuff. So we lose Jake. And at that point, Mike and I both were kind of like, well, maybe like, let's just do like one a month or something, like maybe we'll do one a month, and then some prayer and some other conversation. And we were both like, okay, if we're going to do that, let's quit. Or we do it, right? Either let's do it all or let's not do it at all. And we can do a live show. There's a few more like nuts and bolts things we have to deal with doing a live show. And then they did the rebrand, right? So now you have Major League Paintball and Major League Paintball Plus. And so we're moving from one channel on YouTube where we have a link already set up, right? Where I just hit a button and it goes right there. Well, when they did the transition, there's no link anymore. So now there's an extra step I have to go through. I have to like contact Darren, and Darren has to build out the link. And then, so it's like another step in the process. And then, so again, like it's really taught me a lot about resiliency and
sounds it.
How it, and that it's okay. Like not every show is going to be the greatest. Right. Yeah. I will say our fans have been amazing. Right. Like all of our shows, between what we do on Facebook, because we go live on Facebook and YouTube, like a normal viewership is somewhere around 2,500 in the first 5 days. And then on Spotify, which I'm just being reminded, I did not upload our show to Spotify this week. I need to do that as soon as we're done. After? Yeah, I'll do that as soon as we're done. And then on Spotify, we get another 500 to 700, right? Like on an average show. If we have, there's a few guests, obviously, that come on that they blow up, right? Like if we have Joey Blued on, those episodes do really well. You know, we'll have 4,000 to 5,000 in 5 to 7 days. And then when we do our pre-tournament shows, where we have the four of us, which are my favorite shows by far.
Yeah, mine too.
Those are my favorite, just because again, I'm with four guys that I thoroughly enjoy hanging out with. You know, Shane Pastana is, you know, not only is he a legend, but he's just one of the sweetest guys, right? He's a sweet guy and very humble. And then SK and Mike and I, and so and that's also like an environment I never thought I would really enjoy being in, right? Like, because I was a little more guarded sometimes about my paintball opinions, but I'm not anymore. I'm not at all anymore. So it's, and again, that's a continuation of that kind of vulnerability, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's okay to say it and be wrong. It's totally fine. There was somebody who I was watching a Spick and Span show, and somebody in the comments when they were talking about Scalp was like, I tried to tell Ryan Gray, this was before World Cup, by the way. He was like, I tried to tell Ryan Gray that they weren't going to win. They would go 0-4. And this is a team that I'm about to go help.
Yeah.
So of course I have to say, no, we're going to be fine. Right. I felt pretty confident we were going to do well, but I can't say that.
Sure. Yeah.
I can't say that. I knew we had a rookie snake player who's never played a professional tournament in his life.
Yeah.
We're going to have problems, right?
Yeah.
Like
odds were stacked against you.
Yeah. But again, this is a group I'm about to go help who also listen to the show. I can't say this team's not going to do well, but nonetheless, also things like that have, I don't care about the comments. Like I don't take criticism from somebody I wouldn't ask advice from. Mm-hmm. Right. So like, that's also taught me a lot about like, is that important? Like if somebody makes a comment, if it's derogatory, is it important? Can we fix it? Do we have any control over it at all? Because we do get a lot of comments about like the production of the show. And we're like, we make no money doing it. We do it because we love it. And we're both idiots. Like Mike and I are dumb. And when it comes to this stuff, right? Neither one of us are tech guys. Like we're just like, you guys are lucky that we learned how to turn the damn thing on. Right. Yeah. So sometimes somebody will say something like that. And I'm like, okay, we have no control over that. That's something we have zero control over because we have no money. Right. Yeah. And somebody who's going to be a really good production person, they want to get paid. So
yeah, exactly. That's actually just super quick. I actually got a text from Mike. I think it was yesterday, or the day before. He had just purchased the Dynasty Children's book that I did, and he sent me like a really nice message about it, like inspiration and whatnot. But he made a little reel of like him unboxing it and opening up, and he told me through direct message, he's like, "Hey, I need to do a better job on social media, and I'm learning through this as well." And it's like it ties right back into what you're saying is, hey, you're just gonna have to do it and figure it out. And so I reminded him like, hey, look at this a year from now because you're going to do more content, and look back to this moment like when you see what you've learned from it.
Yeah, and that has been something I think Mike shared that when he was on your podcast. Like I do 99% of the work, right? Yeah. I set up all the guests. I create all of kind of it's an unscripted sort of semi-scripted show, right? A little bit like you, like I have we have questions that we're going to ask throughout the show. But if we don't get to them, that's okay. Right.
Yeah.
Like if the content is going in a direction we like, we'll just leave it alone. But I set up all of that. I create everything on StreamYard. I set up the show. I email our guests. I do all the back end. Like I create all the reels. I do all the uploads so when I create those reels, especially in the beginning, like you can see now they're starting to get a little better. Like I've figured out how to use images in a different way. I'm getting better with Canva. But those are things that, like, by the way, I have a full-time job, right? Like, so like, it's when I have time to work on those things. Anyway, so it's been, my daughter even responded to one of the things I posted, and she was like, "Hey, that's pretty good, Dad." And I was like, "Thanks."
Oh, there's the validation right there.
Yeah,
I'm doing it.
my 19, or now 20-year-old says, "Hey, you're doing a good job." It's like, all right, well, she knows Instagram, so I guess I'm doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is, again, just a kind of a continuation of that vulnerability and, just putting something out there that highlights these coaches. And I've made so many new connections, and some of them really, really good. I mean, Chris Jansen now, him being a coach, he and I've talked a lot during the off season. I really like Chris. I've had conversations with him in the past, just through, when he was with Boom and I was with Texas Storm, and we've had conversations, but never were we able to really get to know each other. I know what he does for a living. I know how many kids he has. Like now our relationship is not, it's not just surface, right? Yeah. Same thing, Joey Blute and I talk a ton now. Kevin, obviously we talk to SK a lot, which is fun, or
he's
not,
a good guy,
depending on what mood he's in. How goofy he's going to be. But we just made some really, really good connections, friendships, right? Created new friendships, and opened my eyes to a lot of like-minded kind of other men and women that are in the sport, right? Like they're not just coaches, right? But understanding who they are as human beings.
It's so powerful. And sometimes if you don't have that conversation, you're never going to know about that. And like, you just learn so much about somebody that your respect level increases for them, but they also teach you things about you as a person too, that you can take away. Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed from just knowing you and hearing you on the show so far is you're an all-in kind of person. Like, hey, if I'm doing something, it's 150% or it's zero. Whether it's from paintball or working out your daily routine to the coach's show, where does that come from? Like, was that inspiration from somebody early on?
It's my wife.
Your wife back there.
That's my wife. Yeah. I mean, really, she's, and kind of with business too. Like I've always grown up in this way that, like, if you're going to make a decision to do something, try to do it really well.
Yeah.
Put what you can into it. Now that doesn't mean, that I'm going to ignore the other things that are really important in my life, and 100% of my focus is going to go into that, because that would be unreasonable and impossible, right? Yeah. But I do feel like if I'm going to brand something, which to me is what I'm doing when I go there, it's like that's kind of my personal brand. If I'm going to do that, I need to I have to invest everything I can into it, because I don't want at the end, if it doesn't work, if it fails, I don't want to have to look back and say, I didn't work hard enough. I didn't try enough. I didn't invest enough time. I just don't want to go back and have those kind of regrets and sort of resentments. And so when I can't do something kind of all in, it's really hard for me to do it and feel good about it. So sure. I feel like if I can't feel good about it, just don't do it. Just don't do it.
Yeah, I've learned that about myself too over the past few years, that I'm an all-in kind of person. Like if, getting back into paintball, it's like, all right, well, I'm not just going to go rent the gear. I'm going to go buy all of it. And like I'm going all in. And photography, I'm not just going to buy something cheap. I'm going all in with it. But that's also taught me to be a better person, like at work and in my personal life too, because I've always been the person where like I'll have my work laptop up, but I'll have my phone here. And like if I see an Instagram comes in, I'll stop and I'll respond to it. But it's taught me now to where when I'm doing something, like everything else goes on do not disturb. And like I'm 100% focused on either this conversation or, now when I go out to dinner with Amanda, like my phone stays in my pocket. Like that's my time with her.
Yeah.
And so it's taught me a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So important.
Speaking of going all in, and you've gone through the journey of opening up your insurance agency, I think I recently just saw that you are getting into the paintball side for your insurance. Talk to me about that. Like, that's wild.
Yeah. Very. So like, I was down in December. I went down and played this ICPL at Official Paintball, and gosh, what's his name? They're just going to drive me bananas. But he and Mark own Giant.
It's not Billy now, is it?
Billy.
Billy Saransky?
Yeah, so Billy Saransky. That's why it was going to drive me nuts, because it's like right on the tip of my tongue. So Billy, literally, I just got out of the car and was walking up to the fields, and Billy was one of the first people I saw. I woke up, shook his hand, and again, Mark Johnson walks up right behind him. I give Mark a big hug. Like it's so funny when I hear people talk about animosity. It's like, you don't know us.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, so Billy mentioned, like, kind of in the first few minutes of our conversation, hey, do you do paintball insurance? I've been in insurance for 9 years, and I was like, nah, I've actually kind of purposefully stayed away from it because I don't know that I want to mix those two worlds. And he was like, well, just so you know, Philadelphia, who's the largest paintball insurer in America, is now non-renewing everybody. They're pulling away from paintball. So I was like, man, I didn't know that. So I started thinking, like, maybe I'll, dip my toe in the water and we'll see how it goes. And I reached out to a few brokers and said, hey, do you guys have access to paintball coverage? And I got response back right away. Yeah, we do. I'm like, okay, great. So they send me kind of their carrier lists, and I went and did a little research on the carriers and kind of what the application process looks like. And anyway, so I decided, like, I'll test the water. I'll do Oklahoma and Texas because that's where I'm already licensed. And so I'll check it out and sort of see what happens. Well, I got, like, in a day, I got 5 responses back.
Wow.
Like, hey, here's when I renew, and, we'd love to talk with you. And then I got another one from Kansas. So I'm just going to go get a non-resident license in Missouri. Sorry. It's Kansas City. So, could go either way there. In Missouri. So I'm going to go get a non-resident license in Missouri and work on theirs. But I got, like, again, 5 responses within 24 hours. So it kind of let me know, like, hey, there's a need here. There's a need. And I'm also, because of my relationship with Major League Paintball and Kevin, Kevin's called me a few times for insurance questions. I'm also going to quote Major League Paintball this year. So I'm going to look at their general liability and some of the other things that they're doing and see if I can be helpful kind of with the league. So yeah, like, unfortunately there came this either fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it. There became kind of this need for me to open the door to paintball. And again, like, I like the separation I kind of had between my regular life and paintball, but the reality is, if I can be helpful, I want to do it. And from the conversations I've had with the people I've talked to, some of the things that they were being asked for from the carrier, 75% of my normal day-to-day business is commercial insurance. Like, I write home and auto insurance, but very little. Like, again, it's so, like, this month, 90% of what I've done is commercial insurance. So yeah, it's a ton, right? So I don't do, like, that's where my focus is. Some of the things that they were being asked for by some of these carriers, I don't have to provide for. I have $150 million construction company that I insure that does not have to provide the same things that these guys were being asked for. So, so I immediately reached out to a couple of my carriers and that were paintball and just said, hey, are you going to need all this? And they said, no, not until we do an audit, which is normal for every insurance policy. Commercial wise, like, they do an audit. They want to make sure that they've insured you for the correct exposure amount, and then they change it. But that's with every commercial insurance policy. Never on the front end have I ever had to provide some of the information that they were being asked for. So anyway, Sounds like there's a good need for it. And if it continues to be something like I'll do a few, and if it's helpful, if the rate is right and we're able to provide the right coverage, I'll open up the market to get a non-resident license, meaning just to get licensed in another state to participate in. For every state other than 4 is really simple. I just log on to this thing, I pay $35 and the license shows up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's really simple. There's 4 states that you have to take do their state test. And I'm not doing that because I'm not doing that. So those 4 states, like Pennsylvania, I think is one of them, but like I'm good. I'm not going to participate in those states.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alaska.
Wow, I mean, there's probably 4 random states, right?
Yeah. I'm not doing that.
That's so incredible. I know you're a really reflective person, and going through that article again in the magazine, you talk about giving back to the sport. And do you realize like what you're doing with the insurance piece? You're giving back to paintball, like that's given you so much.
I mean, that still remains. Yeah, that was the intention of kind of opening up the door to it, was that it is another way that I can be helpful and hopefully help some business owners make more money, which obviously creates longevity and provides more places to play, which in turn is me giving back. Yeah. Especially if I can be helpful, right? And when I say helpful, I don't mean just like I've been in paintball for a long time. And a big portion of that was my job with National Paintball was literally to go to stores and fields and help them make money. Right. And then I owned my own paintball stores and paintball fields. I've made a lot of mistakes and I can make sure they don't make those. Right. Yeah. And then even with content and some things like that, I've already had good conversations with a few that like, hey, you need to up your content game if you're going to operate on any kind of scale, and you got to also make it better. Mm-hmm. And you can use AI. Like it just costs a little money, but it's really cheap.
Yeah, you had talked about with doing the podcast and your reels. I was going to tell you after the show, there's a program I use. I think it's called Opus AI, I think. I
use Opus.
And you just dump all your stuff in there and it spits out 20 or 30 reels with titles. And it's like,
just what I use is Opus.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. It's like I try not to do the whole show anymore because it gets expensive.
Yeah.
So now I just go in to StreamYard, pull the pieces out I want, and send them over to Opus and create the reel. And then you have to fix language quite a bit. I have noticed. But yeah, for the most part, it's awesome.
Yeah, Opus is really cool, and like that's the tools that are out there just for any new content creator is it makes it a lot easier, right? And Alex talked about that last week in his show of we all have cell phones in our pockets, and so like if you're at your local field, pull your phone out and just record something really quick. Like that'll help grow your local field and bring more eyeballs into the sport, and eventually it'll help grow the industry like what you're doing with the insurance side of it.
Yeah, again, it kind of remains to be seen whether or not it'll be helpful yet, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I appreciate you at least going down that path to try. I would love to know more about your journey on Team USA. Like if you had to go back, 20 some odd years ago when you started paintball and told that person, hey, one day you're going to win for your country, like you're going to have a trophy that has, Ryan Gray's name on it for the USA. Like what would that conversation be?
Yeah. I mean, there was no USA paintball when I got into this thing for sure. When it did come about, I mean, I think every player should, if they don't have aspirations to play for Team USA at some point, because it is an incredible experience, but there certainly was that wasn't even a thought, right? That at some point later on in my life that I would have an opportunity to participate in any way with Team USA. And to be honest, even how it's come about was happenstance, right? Like I just happened to be in the right place at the right time when I was coaching FSU in Europe in 2022. Kevin, 2023. Yeah, 2023. Yeah. Kevin needed help. He was basically in charge of 2 teams the men and the vets, and he didn't have any help. It was just, he was by himself. And so he was coaching breakout spa. So he and I think it was the second event of the year, he just came over and said, "Hey, are you coming back to Paris?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And he said, "Would you be willing to come in early and help me with Team USA?" And I was like, "Of course." Like, who the hell says no to that? Yes. Yeah, I'm coming anyway. Yeah, I'll be here the whole week. I don't have to come in early. We would travel over the Thursday the week before so that we could play the layout, get used to the time change, and then usually have a couple of days of leisure. But I was like, yeah, man, I'm sure I can get a train ticket from Marseille to, Paris to help you. And that's exactly what I did. And I ended up just doing stats, and that's all I did. Statted basically every game. I would literally do the stats, take them over to him, which we found a much better way to do it this year. We just took a photo with the camera and sent it, so we didn't have to run around looking for each other. And then at the end of 2023, I had a conversation with Anthony, and he grabbed me at an event and said, "Hey, are you?" So I think it was right after Vegas in 2024. He said, "Hey, are you coming to Paris again?" And I was like, "Well, I don't think so." And he was like, "Man, we'd love to have you." And I was like, "Well, yes, then I'll figure out how to make it work." And Mike and I had already had a conversation. Mike really wanted to go, Mike Bianca.
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Well, hey, while I have you, we've been trying to figure out how we're going to get resources to coaches, like where we can put documents, explain how they work. We have all these tracking documents, and we don't have anywhere meaningful to put them." And he was like, "Put them on BKI. Like, we have kind of a coach's area that I think will work for you guys." Like 3 days later, maybe, we had a meeting. We went in and looked at some of the content that's there, which is really good. Some of it's just outdated, needs to be updated, but it kind of opened up an opportunity for us to be able to now have a place to put this content and these resources where we can put it and make it meaningful. So because we had created that BKI Coaches Show relationship, it just opened up the door for Mike and I both to go and help with Team USA. And then we did the clinics with the NXL opened up the opportunity for us to do some coaches clinics, which we are going to do 2 more this year.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And so our first one is actually February the 2nd at Wasteland Paintball during the combine. So on Saturday, Mike and I are going to do a 5-hour coaches clinic, which is, we never have that amount of time. We never have 5 hours. So we're really excited about that. It is open for sign up literally until the day of. So even if you want to show up and do it, you can pay the day of. I may not have a book for you, but I'll have everything else. And you can do that right on any of our social media, or there's an event on our Facebook page that has the link attached. And then, of course, any show that we've done in the last 4 or 5 episodes has the link above if you're on Facebook, below if you're on YouTube. But so it created this opportunity for Mike and I to have a relationship with BKI and be more a part of kind of what's happening with BKI. There's a lot of kick-ass news that's coming from BKI that I don't know if I can share all of it here, but there's going to be a new platform that's going to be mobile. So you're no longer going to have to go to a website to grab anything. Everything, like everything today, will be right in the palm of your hand. It's going to be reorganized where we're going to have learning pathways, right? Like one of the first things I noticed, and it's also just the way my brain works, is it was kind of shotgun blasted information, right? There were sections like, this is off the break, this is running and shooting, but they were, if I'm a D4 guy, which one of these drills is most important for me to work on today, right? Mm-hmm. What is the pathway what if I don't even know if I'm good at this? Maybe I'm really good at that and I don't need to be doing that drill. So Mike and I are trying to help, number one, create some key performance indicators that are trackable and realizable that we can kind of plug in there to tell players like, hey, you should start here with this, because you're kind of okay at these things, but you really need to work on this. And then building those out from the combine drills. right? So utilizing what's already in place with the combine drills, but then layering them that it like, hey, if you're brand new to paintball, you're D6 and you're just trying to figure this thing out, start here.
Yeah.
Right. And then once you're through this pathway, then start here. And then once you're through that pathway, then start here. So we're really trying to reorganize it in a way that's just much more meaningful. And because they have their platform is awesome already.
Sure.
Just needs to be cleaned up, updated, make it a little more community driven. So all of those things are happening. This is sorry, I'm taking you on this incredibly long pathway.
I didn't know all this. This is great.
Yeah. Well, again, all of this is kind of coming, right? And when I say coming, like within the next few weeks. So we actually got news yesterday that we're really close. So
cool.
So for 2023, we basically, the clinic we did in Texas paid for Mike and I to go to Paris, right? Like Mike and I, it's funny when I tell people, Mike and I make no money. We make no money doing the show. None. We literally make no money. Like that paid for us to go to Paris to coach Team USA. That's not profit, right? We took that money and went and coached Team USA. So, and then we did another one in Paris. That money paid me back for all of my monthly subscriptions for the show.
Yeah.
It, by the way, didn't cover it, but it was close.
It never does.
No. So when we kind of started talking about 2024, Mike and I just kind of made it like, we're going to do it. Mike had never been out of the country, right? This was the first time he'd ever left the United States. And can I throw in another tidbit that doesn't have to do with it?
Please do. This is this is incredible.
Alex Sorensen. So I get a call from Kevin Fillers, who's the CFO of Major League Paintball. And he's like, hey, Alex is coming to Paris. Like, can he come with you and Mike? And I was like, of course he can, right? As I mentioned before, like Alex is one of those people that when he's walking toward me at an event, I get happier, right? Like I want to give him a hug and, he's awesome, right? So I saw it like, this is a great opportunity for me to get to know Alex better, right?
Yeah.
And so I call Alex and he's like, yeah, so I've never left the country either.
Wow.
So we're going to Paris. I'm going to Paris, which by the way, I totally dislike Paris. I don't love going there. I've been there a dozen times. It's one of my least favorite places on earth to go. But the difference is now I'm going with two people who've never been there, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't want to spoil their experience. I don't want to taint, their moment that they're going to have. So I kind of got everything set up. We're going to fly in on Sunday. That'll give us all day Monday, right? To kind of do our thing most of the day Tuesday. And so we kind of did I call it the whore's bath of Paris. We just hit the hot spots, right? Yeah. We hit the hot spots. And then we went to, on Tuesday morning, we got up and drove to Normandy. So we drove 3 hours to Normandy to spend 30 minutes there. 3 hours to Normandy, spent 30 minutes, got in the car and drove to Drew. But I would have never, even at the end of 2023, I did not expect to be invited back, right? Just because at that point I'm kind of a nobody. I'm just another coach. Like there's a lot of other guys in that line who I felt like deserved that honor more than I, right? Sure. One of those being Mike Bianca. Yeah. So when they invited us back at the end of 2024, after again, another 5 division sweep, which they're also now trying to figure out a way to keep the Americans out. I don't know if you've heard that rumor.
I've heard that. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
That's just I don't like that they keep the Russians out. Yeah. I think it sucks, because you're not really you want it based on the teams that were there, but that's it's like if the Chiefs, if they said, you guys are too good, you can't come. Right. And I know there's political reasons why they haven't allowed the Russians to be there. And I understand, but don't understand. Yeah. Does that make sense?
If you look at it just from purely a sport perspective, it doesn't make sense.
Totally. Right. Yeah. but nonetheless, like it's a tremendous honor. It's one that I hope I get to do for a long time. I'll go until Anthony and Laurie are like, we're good.
Sorry. Yeah. Not going anymore. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
And at that point I'll stop going, but if they keep inviting me back, I'll keep going because it is an honor. And it's so cool to see these guys. I was just thinking about this before we came on, because I was actually looking at hotels in Drew. You don't get to see these guys outside of their normal element. And when I say these guys, I'm talking about the pros. Outside of their normal element of professional paintball often, right? In playing, right? So you're watching them play in this incredibly competitive tournament for the most part. The top 6-7 teams are really good. So when you're watching these guys who, again, are normally competitors, right? But as soon as they slide that Team USA jersey on, it all changes, right? Everything changes. And you see people become, I talked about this in the green room a little bit. You see people become very selfless, like really wanting others to be able to have the experience that maybe they already have. And it really is a very neat thing to be a part of. It's impressive.
Yeah, it sounds so special and unique to paintball. And I know money and resources is always the driver for a lot of things that don't move forward in paintball. But I think one day if we get to a point where we could document that journey of what is it like to be on Team USA and go through all of it, like it would be so special to show that side of individuals. It'd be such a neat story to capture.
And the kids, like I'll tell you, like the best part is the kids. It's watching these, under 16 and under 19, kids go out there and they like get it, but don't get it. They get it because they understand the moment, but they don't get it because they've yet to have the life experience to understand how special that moment is, right? Like they get it. They've worked really hard. So when they get to the finish line and they get that gold medal, they're, joyous, but it's like they don't understand how impactful that moment later in their life will be. Like it is so neat to watch. It's an environment that like when the teams aren't playing, they're right there. Like if the women are playing, if the guys aren't playing, they're right there. If the kids are playing and the guys aren't playing, they're right there. And that worked with everybody. It's just a really neat thing to be a part of.
Yeah. It's going through that. I would imagine it's almost like if you go on a retreat or go on some type of, adventure with like new coworkers, you have this special bond that you create that you'll have that bond forever. And so like, I think everyone that goes for Team USA at any age, you just have such a special, unique bond that they'll share for the rest of their life together. It's almost like you create family for life just through that little experience.
You kind of do. Like Ryan Podesta and I talked about it. Like I've been shooting at Ryan Podesta since like the late 1990s, and then early 2000s when we were Texas Storm and they were the Mama's Boys. Like I've been shooting at Ryan Podesta for a really long time. And it was the first time I'd ever gotten an opportunity to coach him. And now like every time we see him, it's a different like we interact completely differently. Right. Yeah. It's awesome. It's awesome. Because you do get those team dinners where everybody's relaxed and everybody's just kind of, enjoying the camaraderie and the social time that again, normally is taken up by team meetings, right? Like preparing for the next day's competition. And when we're there, like we have enough coaches where we have everything statted out. And then, literally at dinner, we were talking about the team we were going to play the next day. I don't remember who it was, but like there was a guy doing something really weird. He was like standing literally right off the edge of the home, like not in it, not behind it, like literally right next to it. And he did it like 5 times. And so like at dinner, I'm like taking screenshots's of the video and I'm sending it to everybody while we're sitting at dinner.
Oh, that's great.
Like just taking these screenshots, sending it out. And like Ryan Greenspan, he was like, what is this? And I was like, I don't know. That he's just standing. That's where he's sitting. Like he's not behind a spot at all, right? Which again, they couldn't do that when we played him. And it was. You get opportunities to have moments that you don't normally get.
Yeah, such a special time. Thanks for sharing that. Speaking of moments, what I would love to know is many, many years from now, many years when you're outside of paintball and you've gone on to the next adventure, again, many years from now, looking back, what do you want your legacy to be?
Honestly, the way we started this thing, I wanted to have nothing to do with the paintball and all about the person, right? When I'm done, I don't want it to be the sport isn't as good a place, but the community has lost someone. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, totally.
There's some other things that I really want to do that I think will really, I really want to start having some recovery meetings at the events.
Wow.
I think it's really important for the guys, especially new in recovery, who are nervous about going to a paintball event, to have a support system. So I'd really like to start doing some of that. 45 minute, a quick 45 minute meeting on, any kind of recovery. Like it wouldn't be AA or NA or whatever A you want to have, just would be like, hey, we're all in recovery of some sort, and sit down, have a quick, again, there's processes to doing meetings, and I don't want to get into that because that's, but I really want to do some stuff like that, because I think that would, I think that could really help a bunch of guys and girls, who don't. Number one, I stayed away from paintball for 2 years after I got sober because I didn't know if I could go to an event. I wasn't sure that I was strong enough to go to an event. Something bad happened, like us not play well or get into an altercation with somebody, and then not just walk straight over the beer tent.
And right there,
and then it's over, right? Burning the whole thing down again. So I really want to start doing some things like that, because I this is going to sound terrible, but it is what it is. I don't care about the paintball legacy. I don't give a shit. That's not important to me, right? The legacy of, he was a good person. He, was honest, and those are the things that are important to me. That's what's important. The other shit is, it is what it is. I mean, sports, right? You're going to win, you're going to lose, you're going to have success, you're going to have failures. It's life, right? But the things I have control over in my interactions with other human beings, I can be a good person. I can try to tell guys I love you, right?
Yeah.
Shit like that. Did somebody's day get better because I was a part of it? Great. That's a good day.
That would be I just got chills as you were talking about that. That would be so impactful for the sport. When Amanda was running the Why I Paintball account, just the stories that she would get from people that, I was seeing every single weekend at my local field. I didn't know that they were going through some of these things. Yeah. And that's at my one field, and however many fields in the world, people go through those things every weekend that just no one knows about. And so to give a platform to maybe save somebody's life, I think would be so special. Yeah.
I mean, there's 5 guys at that park that I know of that are in sobriety, right? Yeah. That are in some form of recovery. And that's one field, right? Yeah. So, and that's really been weighing on me to try to figure out a way to do it. It's just tough. It's hard to find we would need space from the NXL. Where can we do this that can also be published? I want it to be a part of hey, at 1:30, it would be a recovery meeting here, right?
Yeah.
Wherever it's going to be, behind Dyer. That's probably not a good place to do it. But that's probably not a good place. Yeah. That's just as I was thinking about that, I was like, that's a pretty booze-filled environment. Maybe somewhere else. But nonetheless, that's really been weighing on me, and it's something I really want to try to do. And honestly, it's just part of it's just getting off my ass and doing it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it starts off with just a Zoom call where you get people on, and you can do it there, and then see how it progresses. But
the reason I say I want to do it at the event, is it potentially puts someone in a position that instead of turning left and going to the beer tent, they can turn right and go to the meeting.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
where there's like this safe place at the event where they know like if shit's not going well, I can go find that person that I saw in that meeting and they'll understand, right?
Yeah.
I can go find that person, say, hey, can you hang with me for 5 minutes, right? I'm itchy or whatever it is, right? Like usually for me, if I don't feel good, that's like, I don't ever think about drinking anymore, except when I'm in a meeting or,
Of course.
which happens, right? Because everybody's telling their war stories. But the only times I ever think about alcohol is when I'm in a meeting or when I don't feel good, right? Like if I'm dealing with something that I need to take care of, but I haven't taken care of, that's when I have the highest likelihood of slipping, right?
Yeah.
And for me, a slip starts with anger, right? I lash out at people, and that's usually the telltale sign that shit's going on with me is like I'm verbally abusive to people. If I become verbally abusive, that means like I don't feel good. I need to get away from the world for a little bit, take a breath, ask God for help, get out of the way. And but there's so many young guys coming into recovery that maybe they don't have all the tools yet. They don't know yet what to do with all of those emotional things. They don't know what that looks like when they may be about to have a slip, you know? And if we can create some kind of safe environment for them, that would be cool.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's, it's out there in the world. So, I think I'm a big person in manifesting. And so you put it out there. I think it'll happen at some point.
I hope so.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Ryan, this has been amazing. And I think you probably listened to a few of the episodes. I always end it with a segment that I like from another podcast that I watch where they ask, a guest to ask a question at the end of the show without knowing who the next week's guest is. So it's kind of cool to connect all the guests together as this thing grows. So the question I have for you, and then you'll be able to ask a question, is it's actually from Alex Sorensen from that previous guest. And his was, if there was one goal that you were to set in 2025 and it was guaranteed to come true, what would it be?
Ooh. Wow. Only one.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that is a tough question.
Yeah, that's
because
why
I've got
these.
There's like 10 things that I would really love to be able to do, and none of them have anything to do with paintball.
I knew when I asked this question to you, I knew it was going to be nothing like paintball related.
Yeah,
which is great.
It's not. Yeah, it's not paintball. My happy place is in the woods, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, being able to kind of disconnect from everything. Like I love it when my cell phone doesn't have a signal. Like some people that gives anxiety. I'm exactly opposite. Like as soon as I get into the woods and that cell phone stops working, I'm at peace right away. Right. I feel closer to God when I'm in the woods. I feel like everything just slows down,
Yeah.
I have wanted to do Banff, Yoo-Hoo, that whole area of Canada for the last 8 years, and we really think we're going to be able to get it done. So that would be the thing I would want to get there, because it would be like a 3-week trip. So we would leave here, do Coeur d'Alene, and then drive up into Canada. We're going to sleep in a tent on top of the Jeep. That would be the thing I would want to come true.
Wow.
I mean, 3 weeks with my wife, nothing else. That sounds like heaven.
Yeah, no distractions. Wow, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Lake Banff. Is there a lake called Lake? Is it Moraine around there? I think.
I don't know. There's 4 national parks right there.
Yeah.
All together. So like where we would want to stay, like we would do Banff for 2 days, Yoo-Hoo for a day, and the other 2 for a day.
I feel like there might be. For the longest time, there was a lake up there, and my favorite photographer, nothing to do with paintball, captured what he called the bucket list, and it was just this beautiful shot of this lake, and like the water's just the perfect blue. And he did it on a necklace, like a emblem or a pendant on a necklace, and I wore it for years. So like it'll be I want to get there at some point. So it'll be interesting to see if that's somewhere in your journey.
That whole area is just, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
I love that. Great answer, by the way. We've had some questions that have just gone all over the place from previous guests.
But that was a really hard one because there's like 5 other things I could have named.
Yeah.
Because I've got some personal goals, that I would like that if I could guarantee to come true, that, and some of them are really private. Like there's one person in paintball, and you know who this is, but I'm not going to say who it is. There is one person in paintball that I'm really trying to, I don't like being at an event and feeling like if I see someone coming, I need to walk the other way. Right. But I've got one person that I really feel that way. And I'm holding on to this kind of weird resentment that I need to get rid of. But I'm so fearful that if I bring it up and it doesn't go well, how I'm going to react. You know what I mean?
I understand.
So it's like, is this worth bringing up or is it not? And every time I think I'm going to do it, I realize like, it's probably not going to go well. Don't do it. Yeah. Well, it's going to get worse.
I think that ties back to the earlier conversation we had where I forget who it was, but that person wasn't ready to take that step yet and to rebuild that relationship. And so you're getting closer to it, but when that time's right, you'll be ready for it.
Yeah. But if their reaction is what I think it will be, it's not going to go well.
Yeah.
It won't go well.
If that's like Amanda and I have had a lot of the conversations about this recently because where our pockets of people have changed recently and, we're learning about the importance of like vibrations, right? It's like if this person doesn't send off signals or whatever, like if they're not your people, biggest thing I can say for that is if you are ready to do that, surround yourself with some people beforehand. That way you've got an outlet right there. If it doesn't go well, you've got your people to catch you. Yeah.
It's the hard thing that might be close to me that I would want to hit them with that makes me fearful.
Well, at Tampa, I'm bringing you a teddy bear and you're going to have to carry it around.
No, I'll be good. I promise. I'll be good. All right. Question for next week's guest.
Yes.
Ooh. All right. Man, I wish I had a little context because you have to make it so broad.
So while you're thinking about it, I'll give you some of the questions. Sal Chavez of BFP Gear, the very first question was, is cereal a super chowder? Which has gotten a lot of great ones. Archie Barnes Jr. asked if you were given $50,000 in paintball, how would you spend it? I think, I
got one.
Okay, go for it.
What predeceased family member would you want to have lunch with and why?
Wow, that's a good one. That's exactly why I love asking these questions because it goes into like really deep parts of someone that maybe you don't think of too often.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because I've got like 3.
Yeah, same right away, right?
Yeah, like my great grandfather was in World War One, and then World War II, and then my grandfather and my great uncle were on my dad's side were in World War II, and then as literally like teenagers, my grandfather was in Korea. And I got lots of time. My grandfather on my mom's side was in Korea. I got lots of time to get stories from, but my grandfather on my dad's side, I did. He passed when I was really young, and I would have liked to have been a more mature young man before he passed so that I could have asked some of those questions, He had like really hard life growing up. He was a farmer, and then he became a welder, and he like built his life off of welding, died from it too, because he ended up getting cancer on his face, right? Because they just wore these little glasses.
Yeah, not the full
right?
piece anymore. Yep.
Yeah. So like his face ended up literally being covered with cancer that ultimately took his life. But, it's wild that the thing that kind of saved him and his family from literal poverty ended up being the thing that took his life. But
Yeah.
it's wild. Yeah.
Wow.
That gave me some interesting perspective. I may write some things down about that.
Yeah, I love that. And I might as well. Lately, like I've been journaling a lot, and yeah, like those type of questions just help me process and reflect and also grow as an individual too.
Man, journaling is something I used to take for granted. And then I started doing it like right after. I don't know that I've shared this with very many people. So in the morning, I read a little bit of stuff for recovery. And then I try to read like for 15 minutes of something that's fiction. And then I'll flip flop back and forth. Like some mornings I do fiction, some mornings I do nonfiction. And then I like shut everything down for 3 to 5 minutes. And just sit in meditation, which by the way, I'm horrible at, right? Like I can't slow my brain down long enough to really meditate. I'm getting a little better. Like I can really kind of do it for a minute, but I'll sit for 3 to 5 minutes just in silence. Right. Yeah. And then I had a friend tell me, he was like, well, whatever you're thinking about in that 3 to 5 minutes is your meditation. Like, even if you can't stop your brain, that's your meditation. And then I'll journal, right? I'll just write down. Sometimes it's, 3 to 5 sentences. Sometimes I end up kind of filling a page. And what I've started trying to do is find something from the day before that created gratitude, right?
Yeah.
What's one thing that happened the day before that I can be grateful for?
Yeah.
Because if I find myself like in a place of gratitude, there's very few things throughout the day that can come up that put me in a weird place, right? And I know when I'm in a weird place when I'm driving, right? Because the horn starts to honk and birds start to fly and, bad things come out of my mouth. And you where you are in the world is even worse with drivers. Mm-hmm. But that's really when I know I'm not in a good place, right? Because I have no idea what's going on with that person that cut me off. They may be like trying to get to a hospital. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. I have no idea what's going on with that person. So I try to find like that one thing from the day before that gives me gratitude. And I will tell you, 99% of the time, it is my wife. Like it's something that occurred with her. I work from home, so I don't see people throughout the day a lot of times, but I see her, right? And we have conversations and I don't know if you and Amanda do that. Like we text throughout the day. Like 100%. Even if it's just random, like, hey, thinking about you. Yep. Little kissy faces, whatever stupid shit. 28 years of marriage, right? You'd think we were over that stuff. We're not. It actually has ramped back up.
It keeps it fresh, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's way more now than it's ever been. Of course, there were no cell phones when we got married, but certainly not one you could text on. Yeah. It's almost always her, right? Yeah, which again, just goes back to that kind of inspiration thing. She's, I don't know where I'd be without her. I'd probably be dead, just to be perfectly clear.
Well, we are so thankful that she's around to keep you around. And thanks for sharing. I actually do the same thing. I would get it, but I probably can't reach it. I have there's a company called Field Notes, and they're known for making pocket notebooks, and they literally slip in your jeans pocket. I keep one with me all the time when I'm at work, and I do it every day. I call it my 3. So when I first get to work, I write 3 things that I'm grateful for that happened the next day. And even if I just drove through traffic or whatever it is, it just kind of brings me back to oh, wow, it's not so bad. Or that thing wasn't so bad.
Yeah. And I have a lot of good things.
Yeah. And when you build on that, it just builds even more.
I was going to show you a book. I don't have it in here. I think it's on my bedside, but I'm done with it now. I'll bring it to you. I think you'll really like it. It's called A Year with Anthony DeMeo. Okay. And he's a Catholic priest, but he talks about each day. It gives you kind of a thing, and it's just sort of a thought for the day. Yeah. but it just opens up your mind to spirituality and gratitude and all of these things and it's not from one specific sort of religious belief. He is a priest, but he doesn't come at you in a Catholic way. It's just this kind of opens your mind to, different levels of spirituality. It's pretty interesting. I'll bring it to you.
Yeah, please do. I'm not that I'm a big reader, but like when I find something that I find inspiration from, like I will digest it and I'll take something away from it to improve my life. So I'm looking forward to that.
It's not dense. Like literally it's 3 passages that you're going to, or so that you'll read in the morning. And then there underneath that passage is lines for you to just document your thoughts. That's it. It's just like, it takes 3 to 5 minutes, you just kind of go through it. And then what I find interesting now, so I did it last year. What I find interesting now is like, I'll go back and read some of the things that I wrote last year.
Yeah.
Right. And so many things are the same.
Yeah.
So many things are the same.
I've done that too. Is like, I'll go back once in a while. My first journal entry for this year on January 1st, I went back and read, where was I last year, January 1st, from like a headspace perspective. And it's so cool to reflect and just to see how you've changed and grown and how some things are also still the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, man,
awesome.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for being on this. It truly means so much. I wouldn't be in this journey as far as I am without you and your guidance.
Man, I appreciate that. And I shared this with you in the green room. I've talked about it on our show, like what you're offering here and the perspective that you're providing, getting into the personal side, I think is really important, really important. I think so much we look at people, especially people in paintball that are at a high level, is kind of bulletproof,
Yeah.
And like I think we create imagery in our mind's eye about people that they are like living this very, I don't want to say comfortable, but kind of like they're not dealing with anything. Like they've got money or they've got this great job where they're able to do paintball. Like, people have no idea what Ryan Greenspan does to not work. He works his ass off to not have to go to a real job, right? Like he works his ass off. So I think it's really important, the stories that you're telling and digging more into the humanistic side of who we are as a community. It's critical. So awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the year. I've got some great guests lined up, some that I think will definitely be eye-opening once we jump into the vulnerability side of it. So I'm excited for them to be on. But for everybody else, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Shellda Podcast, and we'll see you next time.